Today, we wanted to discuss why our crazily expensive hobby is actually pretty reasonable. Objectively speaking, yes, I will not deny that this hobby is expensive, especially when you look at some of the kits, such as the new Knight Lancer kit, which is priced at £120, and that will only form part of an overall army. The big thing we're going to be discussing, however, is the economics of Games Workshop, and when you buy a kit, what that breaks down to in terms of monetary cost per hour of entertainment it's provided for you. For example, this somewhat cheap espresso martini can be necked in seconds and cost the better part of £10. 12 of them, and you could have yourself a Cerastus night. Now, it'd be a bit adventurous doing that many on a night out, but I know some of you will think, that's easy. Finally, we're going to look at some good practices that will help you conserve money whilst maintaining a nice, healthy hobby budget without anything getting too out of hand. So, pure facts, it is expensive for what it is. These toy soldiers can cost around 40 quid for 10 basic infantry, even more if you're in Australia or the States, who get somewhat financially victimised to the point that I've actually heard of Americans who come over to the UK with a yearly hobby budget, as it's cheaper to do that and have it shipped back than it is to buy at home for the year. A 2,000 point army, which is the standard army size for 40k, can cost you around £500 to £800 depending what style of army you choose. Elite armies like the Custodes are lower model count, and therefore you need to buy less models, but once you add all the items you need to build and paint your models, along with army rules, you aren't going to be far off the £1,000 mark. Obviously less if your army was a cheaper army. But don't let that put you off if you're watching this as someone interested in the hobby. There are workarounds to save a boatload of cash, such as stores which offer discount. There is a counterpoint to make, though, that if stock is selling out, then it can't possibly be too expensive. But that's more of an economics argument, which I can't profess to be an expert on or even well clued in. But anyone who is, please feel free to educate me on the point. Finally, one way I always look at Games Workshop is that it is a luxury product and it's not something you need. It's not a necessity. And it's made by a company that exists to make a profit. I stepped away from the hobby after my teenage years for this reason. I couldn't afford it, so I didn't do it. Luckily, these days, there are plenty of ways to keep doing the hobby, even in times of need, so you're always going to have a nice outlet for any stresses you may face in life. Now, my personal view on the Warhammer hobby is that it is great value for money, and this is how I always break it down and, of course, justify it in my own head. What does it cost me per hour of entertainment it provides? If we look at a box of, let's say, 20 tactical marines from the Horus Heresy, they're around £50 a box. It's going to take me about 2 to 3 hours to build that kit, most likely longer. I then spent close to 80 hours painting them and have taken them to around 8 tournaments and even more friendly games that I've lost count of. So if we calculate the time spent painting alone, that works out at 65p per hour of entertainment, which would only be reduced further by the time spent gaming and so on. I do appreciate most people will spend an hour or two a model at most. That's maybe not the best example, but even so, once you factor in gaming and everything else I've mentioned and left out of that equation, it's going to be less than £1 per hour for entertainment. So when you compare that to something like the cinema, which is easily getting towards £30 a person, that's 2 hours of entertainment, so it's £15 an hour. That's pretty expensive when you break it down. I do appreciate there are other factors, such as equipment, paints, hobby tools, the list goes on. Either way you cut it, the final picture is that it's not an expensive hobby for the length of time it keeps you engaged, even when compared to other hobbies. Like if you take golf as an example, which can have an entry cost of around £1,000 sometimes just for a set of basic clubs, or even more if you want to get a bit snazzy with it. Whereas Warhammer, you can arguably get started with a combat patrol and a set of paints for around £120, and that is a bargain when you think about it. As hobbyists, where do we go wrong? What causes this hobby to become expensive? Look no further than your pile of potential or pile of shame. We're all guilty of having one of these, even if it's only a few boxes. I still have not worked my way through the 10th edition launch box, and I've got 2 of them. I have, however, finished 10 Terminators, and that's it. So now I've told myself I only buy stuff that I'm immediately going to start work on or start using in the very near future. And this really has helped keep my costs down and get rid of any fear of missing out. I always advocate buying models that you love and not worrying about the rules. Because if you're constantly buying new models, regardless of if you like them, or if it's just because their rules are strong, you're going to quickly find yourself falling out of love with your collection. And let's be honest, rules are one of the fastest changing elements of Warhammer 40k. At the moment, I think they change 4 times a year with the data balance slate. So what's strong today may not be strong tomorrow, and vice versa. There's a few people who are exempt from this following rule. However, for most people, I am going to say avoid bulk buying an army at all costs. Why? It's a huge investment in money. And if it's a specific list and the rules change before you finish it, you will be massively put off the project and end up storing it or selling it for a fraction of what you paid for it due to it being potentially non-meta. Of course, there is an argument that GW prices are always increasing, so buying it now will save you money later. There is no blanket response, so do what is best for you. If you've finished an army, get yourself out there playing more games, whether that's at an event or your local shop. Your plastic war dollies need to see combat, and the more you use them, the more value you're going to get from them. Finally, this is a hobby to be enjoyed. You don't need to rush through it. There are so many videos out there about speed painting. No, slap chop is not a special thing. It's just speed painting with an annoying name. It's okay to take your time to get your collection up to the standard that you enjoy. You don't need to rush. These are some of the most detailed miniatures in the world, and rushing through might detract from the finished result and your overall enjoyment of your collection. However, I do appreciate some people hate this side of the hobby and just love the gaming. In which case, those videos are for you. Speed on through and get out there and get your value from playing tons of games down your local shop, at the events, or on a boat in Gibraltar. Just to finish up, consider what you buy, when you buy, and what time you have any project to prevent yourself getting overwhelmed and bogged down in lots of stuff. A bargain is a bargain, and if it's cheap enough, it can be worth grabbing stuff and sitting on it for future uses. But don't hoard too much. There is an argument that being a greedy little smaug and sitting on your pile of glory is worth it due to prices always rising. That's up to you. Just make sure you know what your significant other's thoughts are about replacing the furniture with unopened boxes of product is before you commit. Always support your local stores by buying products via them, which is usually at a discounted rate. These spaces are usually great to play at and provide a great meeting ground for many like-minded individuals with the same hobby as you. I know people online often love to hate on Games Workshop. For example, with the recent Amazon deal, many big names in the community seem to almost relish the idea that this hobby they've based their living on and they're meant to love was going to have this massive deal fall through. Luckily, this was not the case. They're misinformed, and we can hopefully look forward to some great TV shows with proper budget coming out in the future. But back to the point, if the company goes, so does the hobby. So let's always support it and those that add value to it, such as your local gaming shops. Thank you for watching. And if you enjoyed this video or it's helped you shift your mindset, there is a thanks option on the video. The best Xmas present for us, however, would be a comment, a like, and even a subscribe if your arm is not too tired after doing the previous two things. We also give away around £300 worth of Games Workshop product every month on our Patron, and there's still time to get involved with that. Thank you for watching, and keep an eye out for our live streams to follow our ongoing global campaign.